Hello everyone, I'm Swati, host of Best of It Forum. So today we have Ms. Nina A. Woodard for the fifth episode of Let's Talk HR, and she is the President and Chief Insight Officer of Nina A. Woodard and Associates. Happy welcome, Nina.
Thank you, Swati. It's nice to be with you today.
All right, that's nice. So, guys, we're gonna discuss on the lessons learned from the global pause. We're not just gonna focus like how the workforce like gonna come in and how the company gonna manage or maybe focus in their kind of problems. It's gonna be very generic. So during our earlier conversations, Nina, I noticed that you said that there is a very much importance given to the global corporation than ever, right? So due to this in this precedent times, so what do you think, why do you think this is happening?
Well, there's several things that are happening right now in terms of business perspective. And I think all of our businesses, whether they're global or whether they're simply local businesses, because of the pause and because of the lockdown in all of the countries around the world, they really had to rethink the kind of business that they're in. And so, and the elements of their business that are important to them. And so because of the global pause, some businesses have been able to keep working. They made all their workers remote, and they were able to continue to do business. Even some restaurants were able to start delivering. And I know that's happened in India as well as here in the US and in other countries too. They've gone to takeout only when before they had full service. So every single sector of business and industry in all of the countries of the world has had to change and shift and do things that they've never done before to be able to stay in business during the pause. So why it's really important now to start focusing on what's going to happen next is, what do we need to succeed going forward? And as things start to come back, and as businesses and countries begin to open up and vaccines are distributed and people feel more free to move around again, what is that going to mean for our business? So that's what we wanted to talk about, is how do we really focus on that? If we're the HR people, what are the things we want to work with our business leaders on to help them make our business resilient?
All right. So is there anything in specific that you want to mention, like uh, what is the global pause meant for US world?
So from a US perspective, I think the biggest thing that it's meant is that every single organization has had to rethink what was expected of their employees and how work was going to be done. And for the longest time here, so many jobs, managers would say, this can't possibly be done from home, it can't be done remotely. But we've done a lot remotely in the last year. And so that idea of how work gets done and how the organization needs to think about what the work is going to be done, how the work is going to continue to be done over time, is going to be a very interesting, I think, approach for businesses in the US and businesses all over the world.
All right. So it's been common that we hear that this time is really good for the SWOT analysis, as in everybody knows its strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So the main thing here is threats. So we all know that companies have been freeze their projects, clients have revoked their projects, and and for some sector it was a huge boom, as in they really grow well in this precedent times, right? So how do you think it's going to help the moderate companies, moderate companies, like what I mean is more like the companies where the projects are freezed, where the clients have revoked their agreements. So how do you think this analysis is going to help them?
So that's why doing a SWOT is really important for those small and medium-sized businesses who are their competitors and what have their competitors been doing during this time of the great pause, while business has been sort of on a huge inhale. Um, but as you said, Swati, and rightly so, many organizations have actually boomed during this time frame because they had a product or service that was in demand. So for example, companies like Amazon have really blossomed all over the world during this time frame because so many so many things could be purchased online and people couldn't get out to shop. So it was a way that people could connect with the products and services that they needed. Um, Food delivery services, I think that Grubhub, it might be global, I'm not sure. Is it in India as well? But it's really taken off here. DoorDash and Grubhub are two food delivery services that pick up and deliver to your front door, meals prepared in restaurants that are doing takeout. So those kinds of entrepreneurial in, adventures have really started to move into to different spaces. And so why an organization needs any organization now as the pause is, as we have the opportunity to think about what we're going to do next when everything begins to get back to whatever normal is going to be again. Um, we really need to know what are our strengths going to be for the future. And because the way we've always done things is not going to help us get to where we need to get next. So we need to look at what strengths do we need to move forward? What areas are we lacking information and knowledge in that we need to have? What opportunities do we have to do things even differently or continue doing things differently? I think many businesses during the pause saw that they could save a lot of money by not having the office be open. They don't have to pay people to clean it. They wouldn't have to pay rent on the office. Um, so they have an opportunity to recraft their financial overhead costs, their hard fixed costs of doing business in some cases. And maybe they don't want to go back to the office again. Maybe they want to keep working at home. And allow their employees to keep working from home and working remotely. But that has a lot of opportunities, but also an awful lot of threats because you have to rebuild the way that you create your employee experience if you're only remote. And you also have to take into account the mental, and I think this is going to be another global issue, the mental health of everyone, all the people who've been impacted and affected by by COVID and by the stay at home and the loss of family members and the fear of maybe it wiping out half the world in one fell swoop, all of those kinds of things. And then you add, I don't know how in tune you are with what's happening in the US, but in Houston, Texas, the whole state of Texas, as a matter of fact, had a huge freeze and all their electricity and water went down. And so people have been, it's freezing cold there. So people have been in freezing cold in the dark for over a week with no water in their homes. So these kinds of things have happened too, and these will all have a significant impact on the mental ability and the uh, and the way that employees think about work, because it's just been a new alternate reality for all of us for almost a year now.
All right. Maybe as you told, they do not want to come back to office because we really like we can also see like more people are very comfortable sitting at home and doing their jobs. So that's their one side. Yeah, Jason True is the author of Social Wealth and has presented something, a press keynote presentation in Colorado SHRM State Conference, Evolve HR. He mentions that uh, his research shows 55% of employees feel less connected and 63 percentage spend less time socializing and 52 miss social interaction and 52% feel isolated and 50 percentage of people have more distractions and they feel jobs more difficult. right? So
Right.
when that's there, how do you think the employee engagement and the employee experience is gonna have a space in this world?
That's a really good question, Swati. And that's going to be the challenge for every HR professional is to help the managers understand how to continue the employee engagement and employee experience proposition in a positive way, even if people stay remote. And you're right, a lot of people don't want to come back to work. One thing is fear because they're concerned still about getting COVID, because even with the vaccine, there's still some concern that it's not 100% and you might still be contracted somehow. And the other thing is that they've just gotten used to working from home and it's worked out nicely for them, but it also has created a whole different environment. So now when you have business meetings, you might have your kids playing in the background or the dogs barking at the front door because someone walked down the hallway, or your spouse might be home as well and they need to use the internet or walk through the room wherever you're working. And so there are lots of, that's where the distraction part comes in. And that's part of, again, HR's challenge to help management be more accepting of those kinds of environmental issues that confront people who are staying at home. And let's not forget, we're also teaching our kids. I don't know in India if this happened, but certainly in the US, all school went online for a period of time. That kids are just now starting to get back to school, at least part-time live, but still a good part on online. And what that means for them is that the parents have to teach them at home, or at least give them access to, or have a space where the child can work on the computer to be able to connect with their schoolwork. So all of those things really have blurred the lines of work and life beyond anything that we could have ever imagined before the Great Pause.
All right. In the earlier conversations, you have mentioned regarding a history of black swan distractions. I hope you recollect it. So, how do you connect this? How do you connect the history of black swan? I'm not sure the people who are watching this video are pretty much aware regarding the black swan distraction. So, would you please brief it?
Yes, so those are things that come along that are perils that just distract us from looking at what what good things might come out of it. And that's really what HR, again, what HR's challenge also becomes, is the opportunity to see what are the real silver linings to the dark clouds that we've had to face during the lockdown, and how can we leverage those. And you asked the question about employee engagement. How do we reach out and engage those employees who are working from home, and help them understand our culture? That's another part of the issue, because if they're not in the office, they don't get to experience the collectiveness of all the people in the office. So how do we translate those things to a virtual or an online experience that will help engage the employees and hold them and let them know what they're a part of beyond uh, beyond being at home and just doing the work?
Okay. So, coming to the resilience. So, do you think it has an impact, or do you think it's gonna be something which every company is gonna be behind? Do you think it's something like that?
It absolutely is. And if organizations are going to be able to weather this storm and come and continue on and have a future facing history, one of the things that's most important is building trust with their employees, because resilience and having a resilient workplace is really completely built on how much your employees trust you. And this also touches that engagement and employee experience process that we were talking about a little bit earlier. And so the challenge for HR is to ensure that the leaders understand, and it's all the leaders, all the C-suite within your company, understand their role in ensuring that the vision is clear of where the organization is going,
Absolutely.
what it's supposed to accomplish, how it's supposed to accomplish it, So redefining the vision and the mission and having every one of the leadership team speak the same message is where HR can really pull the fabric of the organization back together. And then it's the way that each of those C-suite people manage in their organization, whether it's flat, whether they're a very flat organization, or whether they have a steep hierarchy. Make sure that at every level, every person understands that vision and mission of the way forward, and feels empowered to be a part of that process, and understands how what they're doing is going to add value to that future success of the business. And transparency has never been more important. So leaders need not only to lead, but they also need to show their human and emotional intelligence self to the employees, and and engage in a way that they maybe never did before. Before, a manager would walk into the office and say hi when they walk by your desk and go sit in their office and close the door. And that would be a connection to the employees. Well, now they're not walking through the office like that anymore. And so they need to create an opportunity to interact with the employees in a different way. So maybe it's a reach out call once a week. Maybe it's a daily let's touch bases department all together on a Zoom meeting, or Teams. Let me connect with your whole team at one time. Whatever the organization um, requires in order to be able to touch all of the employees in a way and that's significant to them, and also is mindful of what's going on in their home. So if the kids have to be online at a certain time during the day because that's when school is, you need to figure those things out or know those things. Share calendars, understand when your employees are available, and hold your meetings at a time that works for them, doesn't create more stress for them. Um, one of the companies that I consult with, we have a meeting, and I have 3 people in that meeting who are fathers with small children and babies. And half the time when we meet, they have to like close themselves in a closet or something like that because they don't have a private space in their home to be able to have the meeting. So being aware of those kinds of things that your employees will be confronted with, and helping your leadership learn to be accepting of those kinds of limitations on the employee's part. This is what will help recreate the fabric of employee experience in a way that will be meaningful for each employee. And if the managers can do that well, all of the employees will appreciate that. Even if they don't get the same exact interaction with the manager, but they know that a friend of theirs is getting this kind of help and support, because they still talk to each other on Slack or WhatsApp or some other way of communicating with each other. So um, it's kind of infection itself, but it's a good infection, to be able to generate that kind of relationship building with your employees, and utilize and leverage technology to make it happen.
That was a great insight, Nina, but also, like, do you think being agile in departments, being agile in companies, mainly startups, mainly in startup, because if we take a kind of a research, like the projects freezed or maybe the clients revoked, if you take that kind of a report, most of the startups have affected,
Mm,
right?
absolutely. And it's been very,
So
very difficult for
would you
them.
suggest them to be follow agile or just implement agile, because it's a startup, you can just imagine how the company is. All right, so what is your suggestion on that?
Yes, so I think and startups is definitely important for looking at agile as an approach. And I'm really talking about the IT agile in its purest form, because that's a sharing of resources, right? It's how you share resources and make sure that resources get to the place that they're needed right now. And that includes people and technology and finances and other kinds of tools. So if an organization, especially a new one, if they're still alive today, and they've been shut down since I'm not sure when India shut down, but we officially shut down the end of February uh, in 2020. So it's almost a full year now in the US. So if they have been able to maintain or hang on to their funding, or now they need to redo their business plan and see how that business plan is going to be impacted by what's still going to be relevant. Maybe they should be doing something different in the entrepreneurial space than they started up doing, because maybe in the new environment it's not going to be as meaningful or relevant. But in the um, it, it's going to be up to each one of them and their leaderships to actually make that decision about what direction do we want to go in for the future. I just attended the World HRD Congress virtually or online. It wasn't virtual, it was online. And at that Congress, there were several really key Indian HR professionals who were speaking, and many of them were sharing stories about all the kinds of entrepreneurship that was happening around them and in the communities in India because of COVID. So one example was that the person who was delivering laundry at the apartment complex where this gentleman lived, all of a sudden was also delivering groceries in the morning early. And he found a niche to say, if you leave at your door at night or give to me when I bring your laundry the next day, what you want the next morning, I'll have it by your front door between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. And he would go shop and bring you fresh vegetables and leave them off. So examples of turning the downturn, because the laundry isn't as much because people aren't wearing dress up clothes to go to work anymore like they used to. They're sitting home in t-shirts and and sweatpants when they can. So in order to keep himself alive and keep his business going, he branched out. So entrepreneurship can be at any level and in any environment. And I think that's what our businesses and some of our startups really have to pay attention to, is how do we leverage the future based on what we've come to understand about the past.
That's really nice hearing from you, Nina. So coming to the future, shaping the future with uh, all the kind of failures, or maybe like getting up from the pits, preparing ourselves for the better future. So it's all there, right? What do you think? Or maybe I'll ask like this: do you think what kind of leadership roles are gonna be in crucial for building the future, for shaping the future? What do you think? What kind of leadership roles?
Well, probably emotional intelligence is going to be the number one competency and requirement. But I also think that businesses really need to look at their knowledge management systems internally and how they codify doing what they do, because so much is being done remotely today. And if that remote person gets picked off, cherry picked by another company, as we start to come back, people with talent and skills are going to be targets to be attracted to a higher salary in another organization, or maybe something that they see might feel like a better environment for them. So if that happens, how do you make sure that you retain the knowledge in your business and that your business doesn't lose whatever information they're working on, and whoever's going to step into their place has information about all the work that they had been doing, so that knowledge is captured and not lost. We were kind of faced with this before COVID started, because we were losing the baby boomer generation was kind of retiring out of the workforce. Now that may not happen. They may stay in a little bit longer, but at least we had started to think about it. But now it's going to be even more critical, because as things begin to pick up and we start to right size and look at what our business is going, the direction our business is going to move into, making sure that we can capture and retain all of the key elements of what's important in every job, and be able to help not only restructure those jobs based on what they used to be, and what we want them to be for the future, but also identifying where we need to train people differently and the kinds of skills we need to move people forward with. Um, Before COVID, we were already saying, at least I had been saying to my students, because I teach at the college level as well. And I had been saying to them, we don't know what jobs are even going to be looking like in the next 5 years. We don't even know how to say this is a job that's going to be there in the next 5 years because technology is having such a significant impact on every job. And the one thing that COVID did for us is escalate the advancement of technology in so many different ways. Zoom itself, and we're using Zoom tonight across the oceans around the world, tonight for me, in the morning for you. But now it has so many more features. It's just developed significantly. There's other programs like Kahoot and Slack. All of these have really jumped into the space because of COVID and provided new tools, new techniques, new ways to connect. And so technology is really going to play a part in the future, and it's going to also shift a lot of jobs. So we're looking at, and I think this can be an advantage for India as well, because you have a lot of young, educated, talented individuals available. And with the world being shut down and no travel and being able to be remote, a lot more can be done virtually than it's ever been done before. And it might be very attractive because who knows when visas are going to be available again. So you don't need a visa if you're working with somebody remotely on the internet because they can do it from wherever their home is. So this is going to create more, I think, opportunity for India to look at, again, leveraging their skill and abilities and the great experience that they can bring, and flexibility and agility that Indian workers bring to the workplace.
So that was another insight, Nina. So again, I'm putting in another instance, as in when projects were freezed and clients revoked their new projects, right? So that was all sudden, and even the management didn't expect this to happen, and also and it was all new. Like due to all these circumstances, employees were asked to lay off later.
Right.
They laid off, yeah. So, and that was not an informed decision, right? It was all quick incident decisions taken by the management due to the very very bad happenings. So do you think in future the informed decisions have quite a lot of importance? Because we heard certain things saying, okay, this company has laid off so much of employees, we don't trust them anymore, so we are not going to join them anymore. So that's because of they're not informed, they're not aware of that these are on the way, right? The technology threats they have, or the project threats they have, they really doesn't know that. So do you think the informed decisions are going to do a lot in the future?
So that's a really, again, a very key and important question, Swati. Thank you. So management, there's several things that you said there that are really important for HR and for management in general to think about. They did have to make quick decisions. And because it was a crisis, you expect quick decisions to be made. But if they want to gain the trust of their employees, they hopefully, and hopefully too much time hasn't gone by, they need to begin communicating again with employees now, especially those that they would like to bring back if their business is going to resurrect from the ashes, and um, and begin a conversation and a dialogue with them about what they've done in the interim and how they prepared the business to be more resilient, and sharing why the decision to lay people off had to be taken at the time that it had to be taken. And maybe not everybody was laid off, but maybe a good number of people were laid off. So how those decisions were made And the more transparent, I think I said earlier, that trust and transparency are going to be two really key issues for businesses to be able to uh, instill and share with their employees so that the employees will be willing to think about coming back.
All right. Okay. So now the coming to the knowledge management. This is something very common for the executive, for the C-level people, and also the people at the lower grades. So one thing that we have to accept and we realized is that we need to be updated, right? See, we learning is a ever 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 happening process.
Yeah, yeah.
So coming to this knowledge management, would you suggest the companies to cover up their employees? Like, for example, let's say there is a technical startup and it's a startup. You can just imagine how the culture is, how what kind of process will be there, right? So do you suggest the organization to mold it in a right way, like having a equal level of knowledge implementation, or maybe knowledge transferring, knowledge sharing, or maybe to make keep them updated in this running behind this world? So do you suggest that, or what is your concept of knowledge management?
So you've mentioned startups several times, and this is probably one of the areas that really needs to rethink the way they usually start up. Because in the past, startups had a lot of energy and they were um, excited leaders who really had an idea that they were really hungry to bring to market, and they rushed out there and they brought people in. They didn't necessarily have any infrastructure. They just had a great idea and a bunch of people who could work well together. And maybe there were 10 or 11 of them that came together to try to pull off the organization. And like you said, if all the projects and activities that they were doing came to a screeching halt and everything kind of fell to the floor. And so they've really been asleep for the last year or almost a year. They have a chance now to really come back. And the thing that is most important is to decide who you are as a company in the very beginning. So what is it that you want your company to be for the employees that you're going to bring on board? And building that infrastructure from the very beginning. So starting out, most startups don't start with job descriptions and salary structure levels, um, or a standard operating procedure handbook, those kind of infrastructure things that are definitely part of knowledge management and the way we do things and the way we want to get things accomplished. So starting with a more and not a rigid, because startups can't be rigid. They have to be very flexible to be able to pivot when things indicate that they should pivot for the health of their product. But uh, they need to be able to capture, and in an easy way. So at one point in my career, I was doing some sales work, and they gave us a software system to manage our clients and contacts. And it took hours to input the information into the client and contact um, uh, software. That it just didn't work. People didn't want to use it. I hated it because it took more time to do that than it did to sell the product. And so if you're going to set up any kind, and that was a knowledge management tool too, so that C-suite level leaders could see who we were talking to anytime and what the activities were with a particular client. So anything that an organization sets up for their employees to be able to utilize to capture knowledge needs to be user friendly. And it can't just be something that's going to take, an hour or two for them, the employee, to get used to using. It needs to be something that they can do quickly that actually helps them be more proficient in their job as well. So number one, build trust. Number two, have infrastructure that captures process and practice. And number three, make sure that you understand what your value proposition is as a company and the values you want your company to project. And especially if you're a startup, getting those three things in place early on in the startup proposition will help you actually grow a stronger company.
Wow, that was another insight, Nina. So I'm sure that this is gonna be a a, a good takeaway for the market over here. All right. So I would like to conclude this with one more question. Like, what is your personal advice or what is your personal suggestion for the startups and for the MNCs for shaping the future?
So instead of trying to recapture what you were in the past, think about what you need to be for the future. So look at the direction that your company needs to go. Don't turn around and try to rebuild what you had, but look ahead to see what you need to be and focus on building that infrastructure in the right way to support you. So, for example, if you have been successful in running a remote workforce, what do you need to do to actually keep that remote workforce being successful? And what kinds of investments do you need to make as an organization in building an infrastructure that will be strong and support a completely remote activity? Of course, if you're a manufacturing company, that's going to be different. You have to look at how many people can we have in the building at a time and how long are these restrictions going to be in place that we have to social distance um, and maybe only have half, a quarter of our workforce on site at a particular time. How can we leverage that? What can we do differently than we've done in the past? If that's going to be something we have to stick with maybe till the end of 2021, so that we don't have to be completely dormant until the end of 2021 and we can actually begin to get ourselves back on our feet and start getting revenues coming back into the company. So again, the words of wisdom are to really don't think about rebuilding the past, but look at what do I need to do to build the future.
Wow, that's really nice. Another insight, Nina. So it's really nice talking to you. And I know this is not the first event that you're collaborating with us. So you have already collaborated with Best of HR Forum earlier as well. So we really appreciate your kind of support and kind of interest that you show in transferring the knowledge to the world. So that's really something to be appreciated. And on behalf of the whole HR team over here with us, I thank you so much for taking time for us today and looking for more collaborations. Uh, a good day, Nina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swati. It's been my pleasure. And please reach out again anytime.
Thank you so much.